Hi, everyone, and welcome to CCTV America. I'm Asiye Namdar. The situation is getting more dire by the day for residents in parts of eastern Ukraine. There is intense fighting and dwindling supplies of things as basic as water. Russia says it's going to help the residents living in the pro-Russia separatist region of Luhansk. But there are questions about what's in the aid convoy as the Russian trucks have veered off a path approved by the International Red Cross to a checkpoint controlled by Ukraine. Instead, they're heading toward a separatist-held border crossing. All this while deadly shelling batters the Donetsk region and the very center of the city of Donetsk for the first time. And that's where we find CCTV's Kate Parkinson, who joins us live. Kate.
Yes, well, you're joining me as, I don't know whether you can see, but just over my shoulder, there's some very heavy shelling that's happening right now. This has been happening all day in Donetsk. Donetsk, of course, one of the last remaining rebel strongholds. It's been surrounded by Ukrainian armed forces for some time now, but fighting has mostly been confined to the outskirts of the city. Well, all that changed today, and we've seen fighting much closer to the city centre. In fact, earlier this afternoon, a shell landed at an apartment block just 2 blocks from the hotel where I'm standing now, and one man was killed. And this is really a sign of the fact that the fighting is getting much more serious here. And people here are very nervous. We've seen people fleeing the city. The streets are like a ghost town. People very nervous. I have to say the shelling earlier where one man was killed, it's not immediately obvious whether it was a Ukrainian shell or a shell fired by the rebel troops, but whoever did fire that shell, it's a sign that the fighting is getting much closer to the center of Donetsk. And maybe this battle for Donetsk, for one of the last remaining rebel strongholds, is taking its final turn.
Kate, let's talk about this Russian convoy of aid making its way to eastern Ukraine. The international media is talking about it. International reporters are certainly focused on this. But what about the people in eastern Ukraine? What do they think of this?
Well, that's a really good question. I've been talking to people all day about it, and a lot of people in this part of Ukraine are really struggling. There's food shortage, water shortage. There are parts of Donetsk and certainly parts of Luhansk, the other remaining rebel stronghold, where people are without power and without a water supply. And I've been talking to people about how they feel about Russia sending this convoy, this huge convoy of humanitarian aid. I've been getting mixed reactions, which was actually quite surprising. On one hand, some people were saying, we desperately need the help. Please send us this humanitarian aid. We need the help. And if it comes from Russia, it's very welcome. But not everyone was that positive. I spoke to one lady, for example, who was very cynical about what was in these trucks. She said even if it is humanitarian aid, actually what Russia will be delivering to eastern Ukraine is more conflict, more war. So mixed reactions there from local people I've been speaking to today. Meanwhile, Kiev has also sent 2 convoys of humanitarian aid towards the east of the country. It's kind of like a battle between Kiev and Moscow, who can get aid here fastest. Now, these aid convoys coming from Kiev, one is allegedly heading towards Donetsk, the other apparently towards Luhansk, but it's highly unlikely that they will be able to get to the capitals of those provinces because they are still held by the rebels. It's much more likely that they will go to areas that have recently been liberated by the Ukrainian armed forces.
All right, we see explosions and shelling behind you. Kate Parkinson, thank you so much for that live report, and stay safe.